With American Express Blue Business Cash, you earn 2% cash back on just about everything you need to help evolve your business.
Hold on, really?
Yeah, everything on the first $50,000 you spend, then 1% after that.
So I could add disco lights to my spin studio?
Yeah, of course.
What about new speakers?
Yeah, those too.
All right, Spin Sisters, let's move.
Woo! American Express Blue Business Cash. This ad features a fictional business. Terms and cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/bluebusinesscash.
Hold on. Am I on?
You're on.
Oh, great. I thought I was. My computer's all weird right now.
I have a dream this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
The Hispanic community, they use us for political gain, but they don't care about immigrants, they don't care about women, they don't care about people of color.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, democracy simply doesn't work.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It's the Ricochet Podcast with Peter Robinson and Rob Long. I'm James Lilacs. Our guest is Ann Coulter. Watch us try to get a word in edgewise. Let's have ourselves a podcast.
I can hear
you! Welcome, everybody. This is the Ricochet Podcast number 598. Can't wait until number 600. I think we're going to try something new where we actually try to disprove the old adage. We're going to please everyone. Number 600. I don't know how that can be done, but we're going to give it a shot. In the meantime, here, we're going to do our usual contentious back and forth with Peter Robinson and Rob Long. And as I'm sure Rob would love to tell you and will, again, you can join us at Ricochet.com and be part of the most stimulating conversations and community on the web. And Rob, we really need them, right?
We really do. I would have to say thank you to the people who've heard our pleas. They are not in vain. Apparently, we've had some very nice, and some people really have joined, and we really appreciate you. So if you joined recently, thank you. You're going to help us keep these doors, I guess, Zoom doors or web doors open, and we appreciate that. And if you are been thinking about it, you're on the fence, now's the time. We really do need you, but we have a gigantic legal settlement to pay off, and it has to get paid off pretty soon, and we would like to not have to put that like out of business sale. Like you see those notes in front of people's doors, like in some shops that have closed. Thank you for being loyal and customers for this long. We don't have to close. We don't want to do that. So if you've been thinking about it, we really need your help. Please join, and you get to join Ricochet. So you get to do a lot of fun stuff, IRL stuff that we're doing more and more of, and you get to do you get to join the conversation on the site, which we will be thrilled to see you there. So.
And Peter Robinson would say the same thing, too, except he's too exhausted from having dealing with the vagaries of American air travel, which apparently is bad recently. Everyone's complaining about it. One of the things that I don't hear, because everyone's moaning about the delays and the cancellations and not enough crew and the rest of it, is the fact that it's expensive again. Air travel is expensive, and it hurts when you make those reservations because it's, I should have done it last week. Now it's twice as much, almost as if the price of fuel in the Biden administration to do things like signal their intentions with the closing of pipelines and the denial of leases and all the rest, almost as if that has a rippling psychological as well as economic effect on the industry. This week, gentlemen, President wrote a letter, and he sat down, pen and quill in hand, and wrote a letter to the oil companies that was angry that they'd failed to restore their refining capacity. It's like, okay, we're going to make biofuels now. Great. We're making biofuels now. No, don't make gas. It's in the idea that this country, which has so much energy, and was energy independent, was exporting, is now in a position of going cap in hand to the Saudis and saying, can you please, sir, give us another cup, is maddening. But it's something that everybody knows, right? Unless they're fixated on January 6th and believe that that is the true thing that we should also be spending time on. Because, of course, you can't think about both.
Yeah, I mean, you can think about both. The letter that Biden wrote to the oil companies is not nearly as interesting as the letter that they wrote back, which you can find. The American Petroleum Institute, which, like only a president is incompetent and upside down as Joe Biden could make a thing, a lobbying group called the American Petroleum Institute, the heroes of the exchange. Like, you have to be a really bad Democrat, just like incompetent Democrat, to make the American Petroleum Institute come out as heroes. They wrote like this 3-4 page letter. We should put a link to it. It's really great. I mean, it's kind of 101 energy policy, energy policy sort of description. It's a really good primer to understand how that gas got in your tank and what the costs were associated with. There's a couple sentences in it which are like, hey, listen, refinery capacity and exploration are all forward-thinking things that we plan for in advance, and your administration keeps saying, and you keep saying, that you don't want anyone to use any fossil fuels, and you keep regulating fossil fuels, and you keep regulating cars, you keep promising to do even more. So don't come to us now and say, hey, where's all that oil that I thought you had, because you're the one who told us to stop doing it. I mean, they say it nicer, but I just said this on this 3 Martini lunch. You know that letter went through some really great drafts that had probably included some extremely salty language from the people paying for the American Petroleum Institute. That was then the PR people probably resorted and took it out wisely. But boy, I'd love to see the first draft of that.
But unlike the Supreme Court of the United States, the American Petroleum Institute doesn't leak its early drafts.
Yeah, good thing.
Yeah.
Well, when they leak, it's generally into the groundwater. I'm kidding. I'm a big fan of the American Petroleum Institute. They sent me through college, in as much as my dad had a gas station. So, yes, I don't have the same animus against petroleum that most people do. It is a useful substance, and it does tend to underpin everything. So we not only have gasoline prices, we have diesel prices, which, again, compound the price of absolutely everything, which leads to inflation, which, by gosh, may lead to something called a recession. And everybody's stroking their chin and saying, wonder if we're going to be in a recession. I think we already are.
Right.
And, yeah, probably.
In a way, it's almost sort of a relief. And in a grim way, but you know that you have to have the troughs, and we've had a peak for some time, and things have been, coming along nicely. Generally, employment is down, et cetera. But it has to happen at some point, and you'd rather have it happen in the Biden administration so that people can see plainly the things that cause these things. I mean, some of them are just natural ebbs and flows of the economy, but when you have inflation that is caused by too much spending and all the other ancillary things that we have, people look around and say, is there a way that we can fix this, because the guys in charge don't seem to be doing so? I mean, Biden, didn't he come up with Charles C.W. Cook had a piece about that Biden is proposing to send people more money, to print some more money and send it to them in order
that's the problem.
Which betrays an absolute ignorance as to how we get these things in the first place. I mean, the administration is telling us that the economy is great and that people are grateful for it. But do you think they believe that?
It doesn't matter what they believe. Here's the big take from Washington. Rob and I met in Washington on Monday evening at a memorial service for P.J. O'Rourke. I spent the following 3 days there. And here is the shocking news from Washington. The Biden administration is over. Nancy Pelosi is done. All the pollsters are picking up a swing of at least 5 points. If the election were held today, if it were held today, of course there's time between now and November, but if the election were held today, Republicans would not only sweep to a majority in the House of Representatives, but recapture the Senate with as many as 54 seats. Arizona, which used to be a purple lean Democrat state, if the election were held today, would be a lean Republican, even as one pollster told me, he might even put it in the safe Republican seat. All of Washington knows this. All of Washington knows this. And what that means is that the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi and the whole woke left, which is in control of the administration and in control of the House of Representatives, is panic-stricken to jam through as much as they can in the final few months of their time in office. It's a very strange experience to talk to people in Washington, run around town, get up to Capitol Hill, and discover that whereas the country seems to be dominated by the January 6th hearings, which are backward-looking, incidentally, even the political fallout of that, Republican operatives, the Democrats are doing the trickiest problem Republicans face is persuading Donald Trump not to run again. And the Democrats are helping. The Democrats are helping to eliminate Donald Trump, leaving themselves with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Right.
It's just unbelievable. So, as an American and as a Republican, as a Republican and a journalist, this is a great time to be. The big stories are unfolding just below the surface, which, as you know, for a journalist, that's the great time to get in on a story when it hasn't become the story yet. Terrific. But as an American, the Fed doesn't know what it's doing. We have a president of the United States who's unwell, whose administration is in disarray, with a Vladimir Putin who knows that as well as we know it, with a Chinese president. I mean, the country's in terrible peril right now. But so you get this strange whipsaw between gloating and, wow, this is all really bad. That's my take on Washington. What did you pick up, Rob?
That's pretty much the same thing. I mean, what's strange is that the Democrats of this January 6th, I mean, look, I don't, just as a political matter, I've said, I don't begrudge them going after January 6th. That's all they got. I mean, I don't know what else they're going to do. That's what they got, right? But they've trained their howitzers on the most inconsequential political leaders who are becoming less consequential every day. So they've trained their howitzers on people like Rudy Giuliani and this guy Eastland, nobody ever heard of, who was the lawyer.
Oh, I heard of him. He used to be in the Hugh Hewitt show every week.
Okay, so like
arguing with
all right, but I mean, inconsequential to American policy, put it that way. He's not going to run for the presidency. He's not a threat to the Democratic majority. No. Instead of training their howitzers on whatever the policies are that they disapprove of on the side of the Republicans or conservatives, or better yet, trumpet their own policy solutions. I mean, partly yes, it's the massive tone deaf spending from the Biden administration and the proposal to spend even more, and the massive tone deaf cultural indicators from the progressive left. Do seem to suggest, a party and a movement in the process of an emotional neurotic breakdown. I mean, the fact that there's the last time Democrats lost and felt bereft was after the smashing drubbing of Walter Mondale in 1984, and the smashing drubbing, I think the biggest landslide ever in 1988. Michael Dukakis. And they looked around, they said, okay, well, now we should let some of the moderates in our party take over. So the Democratic Leadership Council was started by an obscure but ambitious Arkansas governor, Bill Clinton, because there was a bench there, because there were still moderates and chief executives in the Democratic Party they could refer to. There were still people there with the keys to the car. Now I don't know where they go. I mean, I really don't know who they would go to.
No,
for that level of of course correction,
especially when moderation these days seems to consist of, okay, all right, we'll be moderate now. We will require all of the drag queens in the story hour to wear underwear.
Right.
Unbelievable. Right. Oh, so excuse me. I skipped. That's the mood in Washington. While I was there, I think this happened that the primary took place. We saw each other, Rob, on Monday. I believe the primary in Texas took place on Tuesday. I beg your pardon. It wasn't a primary. It was a primary, but it was a special election way, 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 way down south in Texas.
Right.
I think the district includes Browns right on the Rio Grande. And who won? A Republican won. What kind of Republican? A Republican woman. Oh, what kind of Republican woman? A Republican woman who was born in Mexico. Now, how did she win in an 83% Democratic, 83% Hispanic district, if Democrats are destined to win the Hispanic vote forever? And how did she win in a district so that even before it became Hispanic was so Democratic that it hasn't sent a Republican to Congress ever? It depends on how you count these things, but the district has been redrawn, of course, as districts are, but it looks as though she's the first Republican ever. Well, I'll tell you what she let be known about herself during her campaign, that she came to this country legally and that she's married to a member of the Border Patrol. Get it? Got her position on immigration, and here's what her posters said. God, family, country. Sounds pretty traditional to me. And she won in an 83% Hispanic district. Shockwaves in Washington. Of course, delight and glee and prancing around and high fives among Republicans, and just the other way around among Democrats. But this notion that that the Democratic Party is this transgender stuff doesn't go down well at all with Hispanics, that Hispanics are not as open border as the liberals in the Democratic Party have always thought. Now we have a demonstration that it is so, that Hispanics are moving to the Republican Party.
Right.
The Republican Party, Rob, this may be hard for you to take. It's becoming less and less gin and tonic, country club, your people.
Horrible.
Your people.
What am I going to do? Yeah.
Yes, and it's the Republican Party that's the
I would say yes.
Party.
Yes.
But,
I mean, I agree with you.
Am I getting too giddy?
Yes,
Bring me back down to earth.
No. Yes, and Texas is a great state to study because Texas was a place with a robust and powerful, and I think it's something that many times majority Democrat representation in D.C.
Definitely,
because Texas Democrats were conservative Democrats because the Democratic Party had conservatives in it. I mean, whatever stands for that. I mean, Lloyd Benson, who ran for vice president, was a pretty conservative. I mean, basically a pretty conservative Democrat. I just don't have that. You're in
Ralph
trouble.
Yarborough back in the 60s and then Ann Richards. There was a liberal strain in the Democratic Party. And the first thing that happened was that got stamped out. And then the second thing was, which is what you're leading to, is that the Democrats began shifting to the GOP. But there was a liberal strain. Anyway, it's worth noting.
Well, if Texas and the Hispanics in that part of the country tend to move to the right, the Democrats have only themselves to blame, because in the name of decolonizing the language, they did a cultural imposition on the very people they supposedly have the best interests in their heart. When they started insisting that we have to decolonize the Spanish language and call everybody Latinx,
right,
or Latinx, as it looks like, you had people who otherwise gave this sort of thing no thought whatsoever, looking at each other and saying, what are they talking about? Well, they're trying to degender the language because they're trying to decolonize the language, and they're trying to make everything according to the new gender specifics.
By the way, Latinx is difficult enough to say in English. In Spanish, it's impossible.
It's ridiculous. Right. So this essentially is coming from the overclass. This is coming from the
exactly
down on the other people and telling them what they should think and telling them how they should speak and write. So that has
in an effort to be anti-colonialist, they're telling people that their language is bad. They should speak English.
Mm-hmm. Exactly,
which is exactly what the colonists said.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
The whole thing when it comes to I'm always curious as to how we're the bad, America's the bad colonizers and the rest of it, but Spain and Portugal somehow seem to get a pass in all of this. Am I wrong in that? I mean, when it comes to what was done in Central and South America by the Europeans, that seems to be blended into this sort of mist of history that we don't really examine very much or interrogate or unpack, as they like to say.
The Dutch too in Indonesia were horrible. The Belgians, in Africa,
the Belgians. Don't get me started on the Belgians.
But the Belgians are always kind of bad,
But it's such an absurd thing to think that the Belgians would be the ones who absolutely have to.
Was that great joke that Michael Caine says in one of those Austin Powers movies? Because there's two kinds of people I hate: the kind that divide people into ethnic groups, and the Dutch.
Oh, there's the money.
By the way, New York State, the New York State official New York State policy. A friend of mine had sent me this yesterday. Is to give you a choice. Hispanic, Latinx, or Spanish origin. You can choose. So you're not allowed to be offended anymore because they're giving you a broad variety of acceptable ways to describe yourself if you are of that origin.
Well, the Monty Python sketch, of course, where they're trying to come up with the most cutting insult for the Belgians. And the first entry was, let's just call them Belgians. That's bad enough, applause. And the other was, but the winner of our insult contest is dirty, rotten, stinking Belgians, which is, comes to mind. And I think they've been trying to atone for that for many, many years. Hey, I just shouted here, and I am at the office, but the thing of it is there's nobody here to hear me shout. It's kind of like space. Problem is that on
Don't
Tuesdays, yes, Rob, that was an alien reference.
Yes, but no one can hear you scream.
Right. I was referencing that. I was implying that phrase known by all.
I'm just enjoying the idea of you in your office screaming, which I guess if I keep interrupting you, we'll all be able to see.
Well, you will all be able to see on the Zoom feed, but nobody's here. But they are here on Tuesday, where a lot of people are around. We meet face to face. And one of the things you want to do when you meet face to face is to have a nice, white, gleaming set of choppers, right? Yes. I mean, everybody's working at home and wearing a mask. Maybe you didn't brush as much as you could. Got a little of that film that they used to talk about in 50s TV toothpaste ads. Well, listen, good health starts with good habits and good brushing habits. And Quip makes it easy by delivering all the oral care essentials you need to care for your mouth. The Quip electric toothbrush is loved by over 7 million mouths. I happen to be one of them, and it has timed sonic vibrations with 30-second pulses to guide a dentist recommended 2-minute clean. That means it goes buzz, 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 and you move it over here, and you know you've done this side, which is a great feeling. It's got a lightweight, sleek design for adults and kids. No wires, no bulky charger to weigh you down. Multi-use travel cover that doubles as a mirror mount for less clutter in your bathroom. And reusable handles in a range of sleek metal hues, including best-selling all black or all pink, as well as bright plastic colors. They just pop in your bathroom counter. Are you on top of your brushing? Well, you can upgrade your Quip with a new smart motor to track and improve your brushing with a free Quip app. This is the 21st century. Yes, your toothbrush talks to your phone. You can even earn amazing rewards like free refills and products and Target gift cards and more. Beyond the brush, Quip has got everything you need to build a complete routine. You try their sugar-free refillable gum. It has a long-lasting mint flavor, and it comes with a dispenser. And the refillable mouthwash that's a 4 times concentrate. It's good for you and the planet. Quip delivers it all every 3 months from $5. And shipping is free, so you can save money and skip the hustle and bustle of in-store shopping. With stylish and affordable electric brushes starting at just $25, you won't be paying through the teeth, as they say, for better oral care. If you go to getquip.com/ricochet right now at this very moment, you will get your first refill free. That is your first refill free at getquip.com/ricochet. Spelled GETQUIP.com/ricochet. Quip, the good habits company. And we thank Quip for sponsoring this, the Ricochet Podcast. And now our guest, we got to warn you, though, this might have a lot of awkward pauses because our guest is a little bit on the shy side. You got to draw her out. Ann Coulter, the author of 13 bestsellers, all with the, timid titles like Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind, and others, which I'm sure you've read and enjoyed. But she's decided to branch out, and hence she's launched a new Substack called Unsafe. She's got a podcast, too. So we want to bring her on and tell us all about her new life. So welcome, Ann. New Substack. Does it cost money? And what do people get for it?
Well, the first month is free, but that's dwindling. Then the first week is free, I guess, if you're new. And then it's only $5 a month.
So this is unfettered. This is the sort of stuff that if you'd given it to a publisher or a syndicate or something like that, they would have given it back to you with tongs and said, there's no way we can put this out in public. Is this Ann Coulter unmasked, unbound with speaking as freely as you possibly ever have?
Yes, it's really, I mean, it's not like I've been particularly seemingly bound before, but I realized when Elon Musk when it broke that he was going to buy Twitter, there was, you probably know, there was like 2 weeks of freedom on Twitter. I love Twitter. And just for example, me in 7 years, I went from 0 followers to 2.2 million. Then in 2018, Twitter took away 200,000 followers one day. And for the next 4 years, I never got another follower. So I'm thinking something's going on. And I realized during that week, there was the brief period of apparently some of the shadow bans being lifted. Well, it's back in force now. But beyond that, it was just realizing the freedom I had. And probably once a day, there was something I wouldn't tweet for fear. Yes, and I have been suspended from both Twitter and Instagram temporarily. For pro Rittenhouse tweets, Kyle Rittenhouse, who you will recall a year later, not guilty. So thank you, Twitter. Thank you, Instagram. Even if you had been found guilty, I think in this country, you're allowed, you are innocent until proved guilty, and you're allowed to put up a defense, as you know, GoFundMe threw him off. Well, Substack, there is no censorship. And one thing I really like about it is no ads. Probably, I don't know how much of it will continue to be free, If you want to comment, you have to pay the $5 a month. If you want to do the Ask Ann anything, you have to pay $5 a month. But
that's
really,
worth it.
It's the price of a quarter.
It's the price of not quite a gallon of gas here in California now.
Yeah, quarter gallon of gas.
Right.
Right. Thanks to the Putin price hike. All right. So, Ann, the Substack is available. You got a podcast now. I know, and I'm a little. I wouldn't say cross. Well, I'm a little cross because I've been telling you to do this for years, and each time you kind of like waved your, oh, shut up, oh, stop, like kind of like I'm too, I don't have time for that. And now you're doing it. So tell us. All right, we want to have it on the Ricochet feed. We're going to try to figure out a way to do that. We want people to hear it. People hear it. What are they going to hear? Just Ann? Just in their ears?
Wait, as if that's not enough?
Talk to anybody else?
As if that wouldn't be enough?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you why I was right all of those years telling you, no, I'm not going to do a podcast.
Okay. All right.
I don't know that I'm going to keep doing the podcast, and I'll tell you why. I'm a perennial guest. I'm a writer. It's one thing to, especially when you're in New York or LA, have a car sent for you. You show up. You have professional makeup artists and hair people to do your hair, and the lighting is set up by lighting guys, and everything's perfect. And then the cameras are run by people who know how to run an effing camera. And then I'm asked questions, and I sit down and answer them. I get a free Diet Coke, and then I go outside and I get a car service any place I want to go in LA or New York City. Wow, that's different from a podcast, as you just saw me trying to hook up to Zoom today. Well, I tried to hook you into my Zencaster, and apparently I could only hear you through my headphones, and I'm not using headphones. I'm using earbuds, and I have some guy helping me, but I'm already really kind of sick of this. What I would like it to be is video, and I'm not sure how long they'll be. I like the way you guys do it. I think I'll probably do both, but the way I listen to podcasts is when I'm biking or walking or in the car, and I hate podcasts that are 5 minutes.
Right.
I'm not even going to put it on. I may not listen to the full half hour or 45 minutes or hour, but I'll come back to it. Whereas a 5-minute podcast, you may as well you have to sit in front of your computer and keep hitting the button. Yes, load the next one, load the next one. So,
well, as somebody who does a 5-minute podcast, I got to tell you, I'm offended.
But I've noticed
cue them up.
people like them. I think I'm wrong. I think you're probably right. So I'm going to do both.
Well, those words have never been said in that order.
All right. If you're going to do a 5-minute podcast, give us an issue that you think you could cover in 5 minutes and say everything you need to say. Say everything that you want to say.
Well, I've already done a few. One was on that weird performance of Matthew McConaughey at the White House. Where he seemed, look, I know, I'm sorry, I'm talking to Rob, a Hollywood guy, and I won't, Rob accepted, you can speak for yourself, but I've noticed everybody in LA just use actor as a synonym for retard. So this is really unfair for me to be picking on him. But what was weird about it, if you saw it, is he Seems to think he's having an argument with someone about whether killing all these kids, right, gunning them down, whether it's a bad thing. And for those of you who say this was a good thing to do, look at this sneaker. He's like pounding. It was just weird. Yeah, we know it's a bad thing. Now we're going to come up with policies to make this less likely. Settle down, Matthew. Another 5-minute one was because the first night, although I got to tell you, this has changed, probably a huge mistake. The first night of the January 6th hearings, I only watched 5 minutes and then had my comments for 5 minutes. And my 5-minute commentary was totally true. It's just, there's nothing new. I have to say, for the yesterday, I watched hours and hours and hours of the hearings. And I'm here to report, A, nothing new. B, they're really making themselves look like asses. Their big, point is Trump was a douchebag. Yeah, okay, we knew that. Thank you.
Well, no, wait. Okay, so Ann, I just have to, before you break all the language rules we have here at Ricochet, let me ask. So, like you you famously wrote a book called "In Trump We Trust."
Correct. Yes, Ann.
Followed by what kind of idiot would vote for that Donald Trump? Right?
So, I mean, I don't. I mean, you can rehearse the arguments for. I mean, you and I have already talked about this at length in fancy salons. But what I just personally, what is it? You are so phenomenally popular. I'm out with you, and people are like, they love you. You're a beloved figure, certainly for the American right. How does it feel now to get the emails and the tweets saying, you know, Ann, I'm not buying any of your books, from self-described conservatives who feel that your anti-Trump stuff is just, you cross the line.
She's a cuck-servative. How do you like that? How do you like that, Ann?
I've never heard Peter use that word, and I never want to hear it
because I'm not entirely sure what it means. So let's just move along.
It means my molecular opposite. Well, they've dwindled. And, well, first, I mean, it mostly happened when he was still president. And I mean, I guess my position is, you know, I don't care if the deplorables hate me. I'm telling them the truth, and I'm mad at Trump for betraying them. What does massive amounts of cheap labor hurt me? I don't even have kids. Why should I care about the country? And boy, I'm glad I don't have kids the way the country is going. But, you know, it's great. Yeah, I have cheap gardeners and pool guy and cheap maids. Cheap labor is fantastic for me. The reason I supported Trump was on behalf of the left behind, my fellow Americans, black and white, but especially the white working class that has just been stomped on and ignored for years. And the reason I hate Trump is that he betrayed them. He lied to them. So, okay, you guys, deplorables, you may hate me, but I'm still trying to save the country for you.
And could I come in? You did a piece. I don't know where I saw it because you're everywhere, and I've been traveling the last few days. So this was someplace that I saw something you'd written. It's impossible to go into a dentist's office in America without finding something that Ann has written on the waiting room table or Twitter feed. All right, somebody attacked you for saying and the attack was, in effect, how can you be against Donald Trump when the media hates him? And you wrote a really quite brilliant and witty reply saying, good impulse, good starting point. If the media hates somebody, and you hate the media, we have something to talk about. Could I just adjust that question a little bit? You mentioned January 6th. Here's how we do the podcast. I ask one question and get out of the way. That's a 5-minute podcast. So here's the question. There are loads of people who say, yeah, okay, maybe he did lose his mind after January 6th, and maybe Ann is right that after talking about the wall, he should have built more than 47 miles of it. But even at that man was more sinned against than sinning. The intelligence agencies we now know were corrupted against him. We now know that the whole Russia hoax originated with the Clinton campaign, and it's now on the record. Someone testified under oath that Hillary Clinton herself approved this hoax. And there's just an impulse to see some justice done. And here's Ann saying, oh, just forget that loudmouth jackass. He's betrayed us all. Well, yeah, maybe he did betray us, but somehow we need to get back at what they did to him first. Now, that strikes me as a commendable impulse, and it's I feel it. And a lot of good people feel it. And I'm sure Ann understands it and knows how to say, here's how you live with it. Over to you.
Well, first of all, I think you can think the media are scum, the intelligence agencies scum, the entire Democratic Party scum, and Trump betrayed his voters. I think you can hold both positions. I hate both. I think I tweeted a long time ago, how about if I hate Trump and I hate Liz Cheney? Am I allowed to have that position? Because that's my position. And the other thing is, I mean, there was something special about Trump, but the media was kind of tough on Nixon too. in the media, not, I would say Nixon most of all, Joe McCarthy, Ronald Reagan. I wanted them to be tough on him and to hate him for doing stuff. That's why they hated Reagan. That's why they hated Joe McCarthy. And I think, oh no, that's totally why they hated Nixon, but more for Alger Hiss than anything he did as president.
That's right. Something he'd done 20 years before.
Right.
Right. So all of that is true, but you can still not, make it easier for me to defend you. This is going to be a weird metaphor and probably going to be sorry I brought it up, but that shooting in Georgia of those absolutely like Hollywood hicks with their mouths hanging open, the Ahmaud Arbery case, he comes into the neighborhood. I tried not to follow the trial. I followed it slightly and looks like a pretty big miscarriage of justice to me. But I look at the guys and I say, you got to meet me halfway. I never tweeted about it. I never wrote about it. And that's what I say about Trump. You got to meet me halfway on this. And he wasn't. He's not Nixon. He's not Joe McCarthy. He's not Ronald Reagan.
That's a pretpretty big spectrum, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Even in Ann's big tent, there's no place for him.
Yeah, right. Could you just give us a little TikTok? I saw. I read your piece yesterday. I think the direct line between Supreme Court nominee Harriet Miers, her eventual replacement on the nomination, and I guess the decision that we're all going to get from the Supreme Court in a week.
Yes, that was really the first thing that came to mind. Well, actually, the first thing that came to my mind when the story leaked was, oh my gosh, why couldn't they have waited a year? We're about to clean up in the midterms. I don't know how this is going to affect it, but I just don't want anything. And then I'm kind of joking about that. Obviously, I don't want another 2 million innocent babies murdered just for our electoral chances. But then I decided, I started watching all the crazy feminists on TV and thought, whoa, you people are unattractive. And also looking at the polling, I don't think it's really going to hurt us. And as usual, I think the abortion, if anything, it'll help us. Be that as it may. The second thing I thought was we almost didn't get Justice Samuel Alito because that ridiculous George Bush nominated Harriet Miers, his personal lawyer and the head of the Texas Lottery Commission. And I remember that time, and I wrote about this for The Spectator in their diary section. It was the last time, maybe not the last time, but the first time, one of the last times, I was fighting shoulder to shoulder with David Frum. We came out right. I mean, the day it was announced, Drudge had been telling me days before it was announced, oh, it's going to be Harriet Miers. And I said, no, it isn't, Drudge. They leak names to just do the person up, have their name appear in the mainstream. It's not going to be Harriet Miers. And then announcement, Harriet Miers. So I instantly wrote up a piece denouncing the decision, and Drudge threw it up. And all of Fox News was pedal to the metal for Harriet Miers because they are the official RNC station. I was banned from Fox when Trump was running because Rupert Murdoch was anti-Trump. When I started to turn against him during his presidency, as he continued to not build the wall or keep any of his other promises, banned from Fox for not sucking up to him enough. Harriet Miers. And I just remember watching this in pain and rage with Brit Hume and who was that guy, Fred Barnes in the Wall Street Journal, making these ridiculous arguments on behalf of Harriet Miers that, oh, it's elitist to expect an Ivy League graduate. They're all Ivy League graduates. Knock it off. This is an elite position. So it was David Frum and I emailing and fighting this ferociously while being viciously attacked for 2 weeks. And then Robert Bork came out and wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal, foursquare against Harriet Miers. And then all the little ninnies and followers flipped and acted as if they had always been against Harriet Miers. And then we got Sam Alito, and we wouldn't have this opinion today, but for conservatives willing not to toe the line of the official corporate conservative media.
And when you said that Drudge told you this and you said to Drudge, are you referencing an imaginary conversation you had with a website or the actual Matt Drudge? And if it's the actual guy, what happened? I mean, he fell out of my bookmarks years ago. But the strangest damned thing, I expect, like I'm going to go to Cancun and I'm going to see a guy with a fedora in some small little dingy bar, and it'll be him because he just flipped, took the money, ran, and lives a dissolute. What happened? If you know the guy, do you know him? Do you know him still?
Yes, I haven't seen him for a while. I've been talking to him for a while. I think a lot of people pulled away from politics after the 2016 election, although, it's getting exciting again. I think it got exciting when Youngkin was elected in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly, normal people could start paying attention again. I have no idea. I have maintained, and I haven't talked to him, so this is totally not based on, hey, I sold it, I didn't sell it, whatever. I have a couple of other friends who were very, very, very solid conservatives, my kind of conservative, who lost their minds over Trump. And it wasn't just on Trump. They are now left-wing on every single issue down the line. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. The only one who was semi-public, so you'll know what I'm talking about, is George Conway.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not the only one of my friends. I mean, he and I, again, fought shoulder to shoulder to get Bill Clinton impeached. He and I have been, and I remember, and I think it was a similar process because
George Conway is Kellyanne Conway's husband.
And most importantly, the man who helped get Bill Clinton impeached. He's a very smart lawyer. He was my best friend. I introduced them, in fact.
Did you really? I'd always wondered. All right.
It is the damnedest thing. I mean, it's like we understand having to join forces with the Soviets to defeat Hitler, right? But in the process, you do not adapt Marxist-Leninism as your governmental model. I mean, which is what you manage to do. You can have a temporary alliance, and at the rest of it say, all right, we'll get back to throwing pots and pans and rocks at each other's heads after this. But yes, we've seen some of these people who now turn around and endorse every single possible Democrat candidate that they can, as though that somehow is a return to traditional conservative values. They're not even making the argument that we have to destroy the party in order to rebuild it in a greater, more conservative image. They've just gone to the other side,
yes.
and leads one to believe that they may not have been entirely sincere in their positions, public and otherwise, beforehand, that this has been a pose.
In the abstract, I would agree with you. George Conway was for Trump before Kellyanne Conway was for Trump. He's held those positions. I mean, our politics are really very similar. And I remember talking to both Matt and George, not a lot, but my impression of the Trump administration was the same way I got increasingly angry at Trump not doing any of the stuff he ran on and basically governing like Jeb exclamation point would have, was that they were feeling the same frustration. And I think at some point they just snapped. But I'm telling you, what was well thought out, I don't know as much about Drudge. George Conway's really smart. He was a partner at Wachtell. He's thought about this stuff. He reads books. Trump just something, and he's not the only friend of mine who flipped.
It's this weird. He's sort of the anti-Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump so seldom brought out the best in people.
Thank you for mentioning that. I want to ask you guys a question because I have been watching these January 6 hearings. And yes, Peter, I mean, I hate to cite this jerk who wrote a really stupid book, but it's something like everything Trump touches turns to
bleep.
Yeah,
right.
Bleep.
That's Rick. Isn't that Rick? That's Rick Wilson, true. I think. That's Rick Wilson, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of those guys. One of the ridiculous bulwark. Never Trump. And it really is true. No one left the Trump White House with his reputation intact.
Bill Barr?
Steve Mnuchin?
I'm not those two.
Okay, all right.
And
Just
I
throwing
always
names
love
out.
Bill Barr. I just read his book. In fact, I'm going to write a critical review of it and post it on my Substack. I mean, some things are great, and I still love a lot of great things about him, but you'll see in my review. No, there was one person I thought left with. I mean, Bannon. These are the ones who don't left without the reputation. Giuliani, the second greatest politician of my lifetime after Ronald Reagan. Those two guys changed my life in measurable ways.
Yes, it is. It is forgotten what New York was like in 1991 and when Rudy Giuliani took office. I happened to live in New York for 1 year, and the last year of what was his predecessor called?
Dinkins.
Sorry?
David Dinkins.
Dinkins, of course. That's how total Rudy's triumph was. We can't even remember his predecessor. But everybody said to me, long time, get out. For goodness sake, don't buy anything.
Right.
Get out now. As the garbage piled up on the streets, you drive downtown to wait. You'd wait to get into the Lincoln Tunnel, and the window
squeegee guys.
The squeegee guys would shake you. It was just an assault, a sense of disorder, a sense of decay, and Rudy turned it around. It was one of the most magnificent episodes in all of American urban history, and Rudy Giuliani has gone out of his mind.
And John Eastman was the one I was thinking about, who was a very respected lawyer. Yes. I read his stuff. I liked his stuff. Everybody I knew respected him. Do you guys have any theory on this? Is it just a reverse Midas touch?
Well, I mean, I think you look at it in a transactional way. There are successful people in business and who've made a lot of other people rich, right? And there are people who are, I guess, successful in business who've made other people poor. And Trump is the latter. Nobody's gotten rich with him. Banks have lost a lot of money with him, and that pattern is in his life. I mean, you compare him to somebody else who's like, well, Bill Gates, I guess, Elon Musk. I mean, there are people who I made a lot of money with that guy. I invested in him. I believed him. And the top pie got bigger. Warren Buffett's the same way. Have you ever gone to Omaha? Ever gone to that town in Omaha where he has his annual meeting, the Berkshire Hathaway? There's people there who I got rich with Warren Buffett. I was born in, they always do these profiles of people where I was born in a one-room farmhouse, and now look at me, I'm a multimillionaire because I invested with Warren Buffett. Nobody says that about Donald Trump.
And I want to push back.
You can use that in your Substack, Ann.
Yeah.
I want to push back slightly and then give you one more little podcasty, one more little bite-sized question. The pushback a little bit is, I'll be looking forward to what you say about Bill Barr's book. I think Bill Barr is a kind of heroic figure, and there were people who did the following. They went in to hold it all together because they viewed Donald Trump on the policy was better. Politics, grown-ups in politics make choices, and Donald Trump was better than Hillary Clinton. And once he got elected, some buddies had to go in and hold it all together. Bill Barr is probably the best known of these, but there are people who at great risk to their own reputations, and indeed I am sure they will be, in some ways, some people will never be able to. For example, if you were in the counsel's office, Pat Cipollone, I think, is another heroic figure. He's going to have to explain his association with Donald Trump in Washington law firms for the rest of his career, but he did it, and he did it honorably. There are some people, but they didn't make the news, and that was precisely the point. It was a kind of self-sacrifice on behalf of the country to hold things together. That's my little pushback, but I want to hear what you have to say about Bill Barr.
No, I agree with you, and actually I'll even say more than that about Barr. He is part of that Washington elite culture, and I'm incredibly impressed that after Trump pulled the greatest senator out of the United States Senate,
Jeff Sessions,
humiliated him, destroyed him. Trump is like the guy who, has an affair with a married woman, breaks up the marriage, and then refuses to marry her. So you got rid of Sessions in the United States Senate, and now you're just going to humiliate him, stamp on him, and we get a Democrat senator. Anyway, at that moment, Barr, I'm sure all of the people around him, and as he says in his book, all of the people around him, including his family, were saying, you're not going to work for this man. Not only you're not going to work for this man, but he, like Bob Dole, something I admired about Bob Dole, openly, publicly voted for Donald Trump in 2016. These Republicans who said, oh, no, I won't vote for him. Screw you. I held my nose and voted for Bush. I held my nose and voted for McCain. You vote for a deplorable president for once, who turned out to be a con man, which I knew. But at least he was saying the right things. So there was some shot of him actually doing them.
I have to say that just in your defense, the book you wrote, In Trump We Trust, in which you enthusiastically endorse the candidacy of Donald Trump for the presidency, includes in it some of the most insulting language to describe Donald Trump. That I don't think there's been a political or a pro-candidate screed ever written that was that nasty. I mean, this is something you've come to new. Like you were saying things that
the Southern bumper sticker in the David Duke election, vote for the crook. It's important. Americans know how to make these choices. Ann, Peter's got a question for you.
Sorry, go ahead.
But before he does, and this is for the people who are watching this in the Zoom, Ann, do you think that Peter at the moment looks like... I'll hold that thought. Peter asked the question, then we'll get back.
Looks like now I'm extremely...
Peter Sellers impersonating David Lynch. And I say that with all...
Hey, that's pretty good. You're much better looking, Peter. Don't be freaked out by that.
It's a compliment. It's the black glasses. It's the black... Lynch is a very stylish man. So this is all a compliment. That's just the look today. Right, but I realize now it's a zipper up pullover and not some sort of one-piece black.
My plane was delayed 9 hours last night. I got no... And I'm in my pajamas underneath this sweater. That's the truth. But Ann's in her bedroom.
Do that again. We got to play Night Train to go along with that. Do that again. Just do a little bit of this and maybe just... there we go. He's taking it all off.
Here's my next setup for another little podcast, Ann, or a column, actually. Or what? I give this to you for free. Do with it anything you'd like.
Excellent.
So here's what we've got. I just spent a few days in Washington, and the polling right now, I talked to several pollsters, including one very senior guy who certainly would not want me to mention his name. Because as you know, the pollsters make their real money from corporations, and they don't want to be associated publicly with their political calls. The swing even in Arizona to the GOP is at least 5 points right now. If the election were held today, Republicans would sweep to a victory in the House. On my pollster, and we went race by race by race, they would end up with 54 seats in the Senate. We will recapture Arizona, among other. Georgia is close. Nevada is ours. If the election were held today, the minimum we do, he thinks, is 51. Okay, recapture the Senate. And then the next generation down of presidential contenders, led, of course, by Ron DeSantis, the governor of your state, is remarkably impressive. Add to all this that in a special election just yesterday, a woman born in Mexico, married to a Border Patrol agent, won in a Democratic district that is 83% Hispanic. It looks to me as though conservatives could be on the kind of rolling edge, of the forward edge of a 20-month wave that could place us in office and save the country and issue in a decade or a decade and a half of limited government, strength abroad, standing up to China. We could be this close to another kind of revival of the kind that took place in the 1980s. And I'm just giving you the chance to be as optimistic as I sort of feel. And this, of course, is all predicated on one person. Donald Trump must rededicate himself to the game of golf.
Yeah. Well, there are other solutions. But he does have to go away.
What are the other solutions? Are we talking ball gag and gimp box here?
I'll say that quickly.
Wait. We're already in the middle of a settlement of a very large case. Let's not let's not invite Ann to take down our entire enterprise.
Properly. I've even gotten deplorables to agree with me recently. This is how I know the number of Trump diehards is dwindling. It used to be people would get more annoyed with me for saying this. Now, alleged Trump. Oh, yeah, you're right. The best thing that could have happened to, the Republican Party, the conservative movement, and thus the country would be if 2016 election night, woohoo, Trump comes out 2 a.m. He won, because the campaign was all he ever accomplished. Everybody's happy, we're dancing, and then he has a heart attack and dies, and Pence takes over. I'm just saying it would be the best thing that would have happened.
Ann Coulter, ladies and gentlemen, Ann Coulter, not us.
Yeah.
On your question, Peter, on optimism, I tend to, just to warn you, I tend to go into these things a little bit pessimistic, partially in reaction to the conservative Republican Party and especially conservative media's chronic overconfidence.
Yes, true.
The pushback I would give you is never put it past Republicans not to blow this. $40 billion for Ukraine. And then I'm a little worried we take over House and the Senate, and I'm mostly pessimistic about the Senate. I would love that 51 Senate seats because look at the individual seats. Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. I vote for him, but Herschel Walker in Georgia, when you look at the actual states, doesn't look quite so perky as the general polls. And then I'm worried if they do take over, I don't want them to do what the Democrats are doing, which is, you were right, Peter. This is outrageous. I think people saw it. If they want to know about it, they can look it up. What they ought to do is keep passing popular legislation. Let Biden veto it. Just keep putting Democrats in a bad position where they have to vote against locking up criminals. They have to vote against, how about one day for election day? The Constitution says there will be one election day. How about a federal law? You can do it however you want. State legislatures, one day. Cheat all you want, steal all you want, do all the Dropbox, but you got one day. Just keep passing popular legislation that it's very difficult to vote against.
Voter ID.
And I am terrified what they will do is we're going to have hearings on Operation, what was it? Hurricane, whatever it was, the FBI thing.
Crossfire
hurricane.
Right. No, please just drop it, move on. It was bad. There are books about it. We know. Let President DeSantis come in, and he won't come in if you guys waste your time on hearings. Or maybe you have one little House hearing on that. But we need President DeSantis to just do a lot of cleaning house.
Move on. If only there was some sort of international organization. Probably taken as a website, but you could get moveon.biz if you want. And
yeah,
speaking of biz, .tv. Her new business involves extracting money from you willingly when you go to her unsafe Substack and subscribe, and you will get what you're getting here, and you'll get it. How often do you post, Ann?
A lot. One? It's like Twitter, except
every 10 minutes.
More.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
10 minutes.
All right.
I get an email from Ann Coulter every 10 minutes.
This lady writes faster than I can read.
A year from now, when everybody at the New York Times is still nattering on about the dangers of unfettered free expression over at the Substack, well, I'm sure you will feature prominently in their list of criminals that they want to make sure don't get hurt again. But thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been fun to listen to, and can't wait to see the comments. And again, Ann Coulter at Unsafe at Substack. Thanks for joining us, Ann. See you later.
Thank you. Great to talk to you guys.
Thanks, Ann.
Bye.
See you soon.
Rob, you have to run. I believe you have.
Yes.
You have other media duties. I believe you're.
I'm doing Gutfeld tonight. Last minute, somebody drops out, so they call me. They used to call me and say, "No, nobody dropped out. We want you." And now they just say, "Here's who dropped out."
Is it true? Does Gutfeld send a car for you?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Man of the people.
But it's not. The reason they send the car for you is so they know where you are at all times.
Control
it. They know that you're
feels luxurious.
They actually say something like they send that. Well, it's like they're not great cars. It's not like Uber Black better. Yeah.
I got a limo when I did the Joan Rivers show.
Those were the old days.
They put me up at the plaza and they gave me a limo ride to the studio.
Nice.
Wow. Isn't Gutfeld most popular late night show now.
He is the number one late night show in America.
So this is like you going on Carson. I mean, essentially, this is
me going on Carson in 2022. Yeah.
Right. Well,
there's no Carson. Yeah.
So you got to run, but you're going to change clothes before you go.
Yeah, I'm going to shower. I'm still in my basically in my morning, walking around in my shorts and t-shirt in the morning.
And the great thing is now I know your neighborhood too, because I was sitting on your stoop waiting for the ride to go to the airport.
You know exactly where that guy's waiting.
And I know exactly the body around the corner on the street. Do they do something about that?
You'd have to be more specific. Which body?
Okay, all right. Well, then generally, when you walk to start,
no, this is the West Village. It's very.
I know it's the West Village. It's very nice. But the last time that you walked to your Starbucks, you didn't see a dead body in one of the.
No, nobody found the body you left.
Okay, I did not leave it. I just passed it. That's all I'm saying.
Nobody found that. You're okay right now.
Okay, I probably narrowed it down so much that you're going to be. So Rob is somewhere in New York where there's a Starbucks close by and perhaps a person sleeping in the doorway. That does narrow it down. I apologize for all the people who are not going to be thronging your house for autographs. Go on gut feel.
Thank you very much, fellas. Next week,
go be funny. And by the way, Rob does this, I think, for free because he just loves the gut feel show.
Well, at least he has a car.
Well, he does indeed. But what if you, for example, had lots of money and you were wondering about what to do with it? You might want to, donate it because that's a great thing to do. And you can accomplish great things when you give money to organizations. Well, that brings us to our sponsor, Donors Trust. It's a tax-friendly way to simplify your charitable giving without compromising your values. Cancel culture. Heard about that? Is it coming for your charitable dollars? Well, big banks that sponsor charitable savings accounts, or donor-advised funds, as they're formally called, have a history of slow walking or altogether blocking donations to conservative charities. Charities that have found themselves in the crosshairs of the woke mob include the FRC, the Family Research Council, National Review Institute, National Rifle Association Foundation, Liberty Council, Turning Point USA, and others. Clearly, not every donor-advised fund provider is safe for conservatives. Let Donors Trust help manage your charitable giving. Donors Trust was built with our listeners in mind, people who believe in limited government and constitutional rights, believe that these things are worth fighting for. If you already have a donor-advised trust, consider opening a rollover account. It can be done in 3 simple steps by calling our friends at Donors Trust. The Donors Trust team will work with you to protect your charitable legacy and help you achieve your charitable goals. Partner with a fund that matches your values. To learn more, download their prospectus at www.donorstrust.org/ricochet. That's donorstrust.org/ricochet. To align with get your giving and your values on the same page, donorstrust.org/ricochet. And we thank Donors Trust for sponsoring the Ricochet podcast. Well, Peter, if Rob were still here, he would be.
If Rob were still here, he would have screwed up that beautiful segue.
He'd be touting all the virtues of membership and the rest of it.
Yes, that's true.
He would be saying things like there's the Byron York show, DC, with Molly, great success. He would be telling you that there are upcoming meetups, as he said, IRL. He used internet slang in real life. Yes, he'd tell you that they're going to be get-togethers set for June 25th in Charlotte, North Carolina, and heck, July 29th to the 31st in Milwaukee, where, of course, America's beer traditions are so deeply rooted. Northern California meet is set for August, Rob would tell you, and he would say there's more info to come. He'd also tell you join Ricochet. He just goes on and on about that. But Rob isn't here, so I'm not going to say any of those things. So, Peter, we'll end with this. You were out in D.C.
I was.
How did the city seem? Because it took a hit, as did all the big ones, and small too. I mean, Fargo had riots and the rest of it. How did DC look to you now? Healthier?
Downtown, what the DC that you'd think of as the place where you'd want to show your kids, the mall, the White House, the Capitol, very unnerving for me anyway. Of course, I lived and worked there a long time ago now, so the Washington DC. That federal district downtown that's in my mind's eye, that's in my memory, was quite an open place. You could stroll right up to the Capitol of the United States and walk up the steps and go in the front door. And you could get pretty close to you could walk down Pennsylvania Avenue right in front of the White House. All the security corridors have been enormously expanded so that you can't even get into Lafayette Park in front of the White House.
You're kidding.
Nope, you can't. It's all closed down. You cannot get anywhere close to the Capitol. And the Capitol, which used to be the most relaxed, actually, I'm afraid we may have seen some of this in January 6th, the Capitol Police, their main duty used to be just guiding tourists. The Capitol, which used to be the most relaxed, now looks the most ominous. Police stationed in all kinds of places. I don't know whether that's justified or whether it's the people who run the United States Capitol, meaning Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, instructing the Capitol Police to make it look as though the Capitol is still under threat. I don't know, but it's very unnerving. It does not look the way the people's monuments, the people's White House or the people's Capitol should look. It looks.
You're saying you can't get into Lafayette Park?
That's correct.
What do they do with the nuclear? What do they do with the nuclear freeze protesters who've been there since Ronald Reagan's tenure?
Now, wait a minute. I believe, excuse me, I may have to take that back because I believe I did see some protesters set up just across from Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's put it this way. There's a heavy police presence around Lafayette Park, and it looked to me as though it was blocked off. That may not be strictly true. You may be able to get in there, but you're going to be carefully watched every moment if you are there.
Well, I remember the free DC that you described right before it got clamped down. I mean, when I worked there in the 90s, yes, you could walk right past. It was you could walk right past the White House. You could run your hand along the fence as you walked past.
Yes, you could.
You could drive past it for that matter. Well, here it's a beautiful day. There's not a cloud in the sky, and I was walking to work from my car. And as I was walking from car, I park in this apartment residential area. It's only about 2 or 3 blocks to the office tower. This wonderful 50-story office tower in which I work is largely unoccupied still. And I always ask the people in the elevator, what do you do on that floor? And I find out interesting things. Law firm. There's a company that does nothing but insure insurance. And there's a company that does nothing but arrange for the cargo that comes here to get there. They don't own any trucks. They just are the people who arrange for this to get there.
Right.
The American economy is just full of these fascinating things.
Yes.
So as I walk out of my car, and I'm about half a block, and I smell something that just stops me because that's such a delicious summer aroma. It's not jasmine. It's not the lilac bushes. It's hot dogs. It's a little early in the day, I think, for this, and maybe I'm missing. Am I getting this right? First sign of some brain tumor, like Gershwin smelling a pencil or something. No, I smell hot dogs, and I think, well, we're supposed to have these days something more fancy. We're supposed to have the artisanal bratwurst, stone ground mustard with the IPA beer and the rest of it. But there's still the smell of an American hot dog on the grill with a bun is so wonderful to just catch out of nowhere. And it brings you back 20, 30 years to your 40 years to your own childhood. It brings you back to when you made them for the kids, brings you back to fairs that you went to, brings you back to neighborhood, organizations that would have the hot dogs for make a buck or two, an American hot dog in summer. And then you think, if I bring this up on the podcast, everybody's going to be nodding their head and saying it's a wonderful thing. And maybe I should leave that for the 600th podcast when we try to make everybody happy. Because the minute you start talking about that, and I describe the fact that I like ketchup on my hot dog, instantaneously the brass knuckles come out. That's an absolute abrogation of the spirit of it. You can't do that. You should only have mustard on it. What do you mean ketchup on a hot dog? Are you mad? And then we argue about that. So in my head, I'm sort of playing out how everything eventually devolves into some sort of bitter little internecine war. And then I look up at the sky, which is cloudless, and I see this small little silver object, the plane, with 2 gorgeous contrails coming off of it as it climbs into the sky to disappear forever. And I realize how warm it is and how clear and how still everything is clean. It's not back to where it was before, but it's not boarded. The fences are down. They're not mad people roaming the streets. I'm not afraid for my safety. And I've just smelled hot dogs. And even though inflation is what it was, and the savings are cratering, and the market is doing what it's doing, and all of these things, you just have to realize at some point, a day in June in a good place is a sign that really sometimes everything is just absolutely wonderful. And you have to treasure those moments because they're going to be ruined the moment you turn around the corner and get an email or a tweet. But I hope that everybody this weekend has a moment like that. Just absolute, I'll take this. I'll remember this. I'll put this one away because this is what we're here for. Not the yelling and the screaming. Yeah, we're here for the yelling and the screaming, but also just for stopping and breathing and looking at the sky and seeing the marvels and the miracles and realizing, wow, what a country still. Peter, any plans for the weekend? Any television show you'd like to tell people you're watching? I have a recommendation that you may like, and actually most people, I don't know, It depends if whether or not you like the slow burn sort of strange show. But
I do.
I started watching something called Night Sky.
Night Sky,
which has J.K. Simmons and Sissy Spacek in it, and they're just tremendous.
And this is
like an
episodic.
old married couple.
This is season one. Or it's one of these things that we know it's only 4 episodes.
It's season one, and there damn well better be a 2 because it's. All we know about this couple when we see the opening sequence is this the early 70s, let's say. She's infirm, he's not. He's big, hale farmer type. We just see them walk out of the back of their house. They live in a rural place, down to the shed. They go down the stairs. They open up the door and they get some chairs and turn on the lights. And down in their shed, underneath their shed, is a room with a huge window that looks out on a completely alien planet.
Ooh,
and that's all we know about them at the start.
I love that.
And they just talk about their day and what they do. They just come down here to talk. And like I say, slow burn, takes its time, not action at all, but it is lovely. And you are watching.
I am watching. I'm waiting for the second half of the final season of Better Call Saul to drop. Because they got me through halfway through. This notion that seasons get divided is a new one, and it's torturing me.
Yes.
I thought I was watching the final season, and they stopped it halfway through. All right, so that I will be watching. I tried on the airplane to download this new Bosch Legacy. That's it exactly. And
we call it dollar store Bosch around.
Yeah, exactly. So you're the one who told me a different production company, and they clearly don't have the money that they had the first time, but it's still good, right?
I think well, yes. I mean, I love the character. I love Titus Welliver playing the character.
Yeah,
period.
I do too.
So I will watch him do anything. I think missed a huge opportunity, I think, with this one. But there's the second season coming. He does stuff that is just un-Bosch-like. This just doesn't fit what they'd established in the show.
That's too bad.
And the idea of him without authority is interesting because he has his own authority. We realize, of course, as a character, as a man of certain moral beliefs, but without official authority, there is something different. But it's worth watching. But I reset your expectation.
Yeah. So what I could download for some reason, this has nothing to do with, this is not a complaint against the internet. It's a complaint against my own usual incompetence. But I was able to download the latest Michael Connelly novel, Bosch novel. He's still producing those. I was in the mood for a summer sort of beach read, even though I was on an airplane. It's called Dead Drop.
Yep.
And,
but it's not a Bosch novel. I mean, it's mostly Ballard, his new character, right?
No. Well, no, this is definitely Bosch. This is Bosch from beginning to end.
Because he's about 80 in the books now. At least he's about 75.
I thought this was the most recent. I thought this was a brand new, although it's clearly set in some earlier time. Bosch is still vigorous. He's still with the LAPD. Taxi companies are involved in this, and we never hear of the existence of Lyft or Uber. So it's clearly set in somewhere in the past.
Idea.
And you know what? There is a lot to be said for a competent novelist who can handle a police procedural. You get the crime, and then bit by bit, who did it? Why did he do it? Red herring. And Michael Connelly is a professional. This will not change your life. It does not address, it doesn't really even attempt to address huge issues of sin and redemption and the state of, it's a good police procedural, competently done. And boy, is there a lot to be said for that when you're stuck on an airplane.
That's the great thing about summer. You buy, and that's the great thing about authors like Connelly is that it's not a guilty pleasure. He's a very skilled craftsman and intelligent. Yes, and sometimes he's not a guy you read for the language, but he's not a guy who doesn't know how to use it. And so I've never been disappointed with his.
Very well put.
Never been disappointed with his books. Except for the last one. I don't like his new character. But that's another story. That's another podcast. Maybe we ought to do that. Uncommon Knowledge Books with Peter Robinson and James Lalix, where they discuss the genre.
By the way, who did you compare me to? I have to look these people up. You said to Ann that I looked like somebody doing...
Peter Sellers.
Peter Sellers, I know.
Impersonating David Lynch.
David Lynch, I have no idea who that is.
He was the director of Twin Peaks. He's the director of Straight Story, of Blue Velvet, any number of things. He has a big shock of gray hair, which you don't. But he has the glasses, And there was something about when you were in shadow somewhat. This what you're wearing that you so enticingly took off a little while ago looked entirely black, like it was some sort of something you would expect
black sweater. All right.
A chic LA director to wear. That was the whole look. I thought I would do that. And
well, that is surely it is certainly the first and surely the last time I will ever be compared to a chic LA director. So, James,
I wouldn't.
Thank you for that. That's a beautiful way. Now, don't backtrack on it. Leave it. Let it stand. I want to launch myself into the weekend with that thought in mind.
Go out, buy a silk black shirt, wear it around. With the black glasses, people will wonder exactly what new Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or Stars thing you got going. In the meantime, folks, after you have gone to Ann's thing, and thank you for listening to that podcast, you might want to consider buying yourself a toothbrush. They're pretty good. Quip. Yeah, I love them, and you might consider Donors Trust as well when it comes to your charitable giving. And supporting them helps support us. And join Ricochet today, as Rob will tell you, had the pants sued off of the operation, and we
did nothing wrong.
No. And if you would, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would really help. Would it kill you to do it? I mean, would it just lay you low? Don't think so. Your reviews allow other people to find the show. It surfaces it. It gets more members. That's the way it's supposed to work. And we hope it does in the future, because episode 600, we're going to be there in a couple of weeks. Can't wait for 700. What will we be talking about then? I have no idea. In any case, we'll be talking to you, if you wish, in the comments at Ricochet 4.0. Peter, see you next week.
Next week, James. I'm off to have a hot dog.
Ricochet. Join the conversation.